Hi, today I'm going to go ahead and make my version of the pork chop. And aside from the pork chop, which I will open up on camera, the ingredients that will be involved. We have the epic pork lard, and we're going to use lard to cook a pork chop because that's the way to do it. We have garlic powder, organic rosemary. We have a little bit of fish sauce, not for the pork actually. It's going to be for the side dish, which is going to be blackened zucchini and yellow squash. And I usually do combo colors, so it looks a little bit more colorful. So that's the dish today, pork chop with blackened vegetables. So I'm going to go ahead and open up my Whole Foods, yes, or as the natives call it, Amazon. And so the first thing we need to understand is that when we cook a piece of pork, we can't make it taste any better than it started out to be. All we can do is try not to destroy it. And so you can only have as good of a pork chop as you started out with as far as quality. And so look at that bad boy right there. Yummy. So what we're going to first start doing is we're going to paper towel it, just get it patted down nice and dry. And I should have done this before, but let me go ahead and grab the salt and a timer. And for pork chop, this is pork. Salt penetrates pork a lot faster than it does chicken. And so for something like this, we're probably looking, this is 3/4 of an inch. I prefer a thicker one because it's just going to be juicier. Now I know everybody's saying, well, when you cook a piece of pork, it turns out super, super tough, blah, 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 blah. No, when you cook a piece of pork, it turns out super tough. When I cook it, it's super juicy and delicious. And so we're gonna go ahead and pick a thicker one. But like I said, I usually have the roll for steak, which is an inch. Salt will penetrate an inch of steak thoroughly in 10 minutes. For pork though, salt penetrates a little bit faster, and also because we're gonna go ahead and perforate it. And so we're gonna go with 5 minutes of dry marination. But before we do that, here's the secret. I have a tool for doing this, but I'm going to go ahead and use a fork so that people who don't have a perforation tool, a marination tool, can do it also. And what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and we're going to tattoo this piece of pork with just holes, just like this. And we're going to make little railroad tracks. I usually just have them face one way. That way it's much easier to see if I've pierced it or not. And I know there's people who pound their meat, but I don't really want to pound the meat because I want the juice to be retained. But at the same time, I want it to be nice and soft. For the pork chop, I definitely prefer the bone-in versus boneless. But just like a ribeye, I consider this the dinner side and the candy side, right? So we go ahead, and I don't know if you catch it on camera, I don't know if you can, but we go ahead and perforate the entire piece of meat with a fork. And then we're going to go ahead and flip it. Now, Meat 101 says the muscle basically has no bacteria, the piece of meat. But once we perforate it, there's a chance for bacteria to go into it. And so you never want to just leave perforated meat sitting out or anything like that. And yes, before we forget to talk about it, we really want to work with what? A near room temperature piece of meat. So if you can take it out of the fridge 5-10 minutes beforehand, then go ahead and do so. All right, so we have the piece of meat fairly well perforated. And like I said, we're doing this before we're cooking it, right? The prep has to happen beforehand because we've perforated the meat and it's in danger of bacteria. And so what we want, however, is good salt coverage. Now, Thomas Keller said the difference between a good chef and a great chef is salt control. And so we shall see. Let me see if I can go ahead and salt this guy. And we want good, even coverage on both sides. I don't know if you can see that. Look at that. Nice, even coverage, right? And the secret to even coverage, obviously, is going to be kosher salt. Because the desiccant in kosher salt allows it to be dry and coarse and lets you get a good grip. And what you want is really nice, even coverage. It's like college basketball, right? You got zone coverage, and the coverage needs to be complete and very, very even. Because if it's not, you're not going to have a well-cooked steak. So I'm just about there as far as covering up that steak. Now, I'm going to go ahead and do something here on the fatty side, and you'll see. We can go ahead and see. Usually, if you cook it and there's a piece of tendon or something like that, that meat's going to curl up just a little bit. So we're going to go ahead and do the Japanese thing, and we're going to cheat. And we're going to go ahead and just ever so slightly score the edges. Score the edges of the fat side, just like that. And we'll do that for the other side as well. We just want to cut that tissue right. Cut it so that when you cook it, the pork chop does not flip up. So we're going to go ahead and set this aside, and I will make an attempt to go ahead and adjust the clock. And for a steak this side, what did I say? 5 minutes, and we're off. And we'll come back when it's about. While our pork chop is marinating, I'm going to go ahead and get cut up the vegetables. And so we have zucchini and yellow squash. So we're going to go ahead and round cut the zucchini and the yellow squash. Ends off. And if you're going to be a chef long term or learn how to cook, you really need to have really good knife skills. I can't stand people who say stupid things like, I know how to cook, I just don't know how to cut. Then you don't know how to cook. So our vegetables are done. We're going to go ahead and probably start heating the skillet. So I will come back with a heated skillet. We've got a little less than 2 minutes left, and as you can hear, the vent is going on, so we're going to go ahead and take this time to fire up the skillet. So we're almost there. You can see our timer's got, what, 6 seconds left. It's going to beep. And so our pork chop is ready to go. I'm going to go ahead and lightly dust it with a little bit of pepper. So, since I'm almost out of lard, that's alright. So, you want something that sears really well. So if you've got something like non-stick, then you suck. Because the food's going to suck. And so let's go ahead and oil up skillet, get it nice and piping hot. Ooh, that's smoking. And we're in. we want to do is go ahead and grab our trusty timer and set it for 2 minutes. Now, if you don't own a timer in the kitchen, then your food's probably going to suck really bad. I'm sorry to tell you, because most people just do not have a good internal clock and they can't tell if food is cooked well, rare, or not. So we're going to go ahead and there's a little lard on top of that. Why not? Go ahead and get your tongs ready. And at the 2 minute mark, we'll go ahead and flip this guy. Lard off of it. So what we're going to do is we're cooking it. It's salty already. So we're going to go ahead and wait for us to flip it. So what we're going to do is actually going to go 2 minutes on one side, side A, 2 minutes on side B. Sprinkle some seasoning, in this case garlic powder. 1 minute, 1 minute, sprinkle some rosemary, 10 seconds, 10 seconds, and then we're plating. So you want really good heat control, and this is the other, and you'll hear this throughout every single video I make pretty much, which is this is a carbon steel. If you don't have a carbon steel, you want something like a cast iron. Here you go, here's my other kids. You want something like a cast iron or carbon steel so it sears really well, and we'll find out when I flip it, that bad boy's gonna look delicious. And the other thing is you want really good, what Chinese call fire control, right? Timer beeped. I'm gonna try not to touch the meat as much as possible. I'm gonna grab it by the bone if possible so I don't squish the juices out. And look at that. So we're gonna go ahead and cook this side 2 minutes as well. That's looking pretty good, huh? See if I can get a higher angle shot here. Oh, there we go. That's a much better angle shot. And so we're gonna go 2 minutes. Now, why didn't we go ahead and put the garlic first? Because garlic burns really, really easily. So we're gonna go ahead and right now lightly dust, or I guess if you like a lot of garlic, you can go ahead and heavily dust the garlic. And we're gonna go ahead and let that cook for 2 minutes on side B. And then when we're done, we're gonna go ahead and cook it on side A 1 more minute, and then while we dust the other side with garlic. And then we'll go ahead and cook the other side 1 more minute, and we're gonna dust each side with rosemary for about 10 seconds, and then we'll go ahead and plate it. So while I'm waiting, I'll go ahead and bring out a plate. And don't really touch it. Just leave it be. If you're thinking it's probably not going to get cooked all the way through, that's probably because your pan is really, really thin. Something like a high carbon steel or a cast iron when properly heated. Here's why you really should not have a thin pan. When you have a piece of meat that's somewhat cold and it's this thick, I'll get to it while I flip it. When you have a piece of meat that's almost 1 inch thick, that is hot. Sorry. And fail. When you have a piece of meat that's about 1 inch thick, and you have a pan that's like 1 millimeter thick, what happens is, and again, we want to aim for good even coverage. what happens is, set the timer for 1 minute. What happens is you put that piece of meat, that cold piece of meat, onto a really thin piece of pan that has low conductive properties, and that pan cools down right away. And so you're waiting for the heat to heat the pan back up, which now you're steaming your piece of meat and evaporating most of it. Right? So you want something nice and heavy that will provide a very, very good sear. Very good sear. Now I know the fat on the edge of this piece of meat looks fairly thick, so probably I'll go ahead and heat that at the end of the cooking process to sear the fat, or to render the fat, I should say. And I'll go ahead and do that just so there'll be some fat for my vegetables when I saute. So, we're coming up on our minute. Alarm's beeping. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and what? Lightly dust. Our steak with rosemary. Go ahead and start that clock. 1 minute on this side as well. I do try to cheat a little bit. You see where the T-bone is? I try to press, because this is going to be the area that cooks the least, because it might not be touching the grill, although I'm getting good charring, so it apparently is. And the smoke that has increased exponentially is really the garlic burning. We want it to burn a little bit, but we don't want it to burn too much. And we're coming up on the 1 minute. So we're gonna go ahead and flip this, count to 10, flip it. I'm gonna go ahead and sear the edges, and then we're good to go. So our minute is up. We're gonna go ahead and grab this bad boy. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I guess a little longer than 10 seconds because I haven't gotten a chance to test this side of the rosemary. We're going to go ahead and, ooh, that smells really good. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And we're pretty good. And we're going to go ahead, I'm going to go ahead and render that fat on the edge right there. And also on the back side of this. Let's render it just a few seconds more. And our steak, our pork chop is done. We'll go ahead and set that aside. And we'll go ahead and add just a little bit of oil. Erica's favorite part. Throw that back in. And we're going to go ahead and saute these. And go ahead and have it and scrape off the fond. Keep it a little high. So we're going to have the vegetables pick up all the crunchy bits that was on the bottom. That's known as the fond. And most chefs are, fond of fond. If you watch Binging with Babish, that's, I think, one of his favorite items. And so what we're going to go ahead and do is grab our fish sauce. 1, 2. We're good. Move that around. Fish sauce is the fermented fish, but it is packed with umami. And so we're going to go ahead and put some in to give our blackened vegetables a little bit of umami. A little bit of water, cover that. We'll go ahead and give that a minute. point in time, I usually like to take a look, and if there's any liquid left, I'll go ahead and turn the heat up high and let the vegetables absorb whatever flavoring is left, and also let the heat dry out the pan. So that looks pretty good to me, so let's go ahead and plate this bad boy. And that seems like a lot of vegetables. It's okay. So let's take this over to the dining room. Hi, we're back, and of course, widen the shot just a little bit. We're going to go ahead and shoot the obligatory taste test, and we're going to do it, obviously, Google style, with homemade kombucha, and give you a shot. Ooh, juice is running. So we're going to go ahead and try it. And the first thing you notice is that there's a nice crust on it, and it is crunchy. And those who wonder, it's cooked all the way through. And that is damn good. I've eaten pork chop in a lot of places in my life. The way I do them pretty much is the best. Don't knock it till you try it. And then blackened vegetables. That is delicious. And that's rosemary garlic pork chop with blackened zucchini and yellow squash.